O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. Now, usually when quote unquote science is mentioned in public spaces, you know there's a deception trailing behind it. The word science is used as a blinder or a veil in the present time that we call the 21st century. You see this in the media, whether social or popular, which begins sentences by saying, scientists say, or studies show, and such things. Now, as soon as phrases like these pop up, you and I are meant to settle back and say, I'm about to hear something true. I'm about to gain some knowledge here. And that's not automatically true. Really, you're meant to let your guard down. And I'm the opposite. When I see or read that, what I think is, I better look for the lie. That I'm about to get something that's true or apparently true, and then there's going to be some deception stirred in. I've used the example before of taking a potent poison and mixing it in with the purest water. Now, just that one drop of poison in a lot of water, it can make you ill or kill you. And that's how quote unquote science is used. And it's not a new tactic. You think about beginning of the Bible, you got the devil or the serpent, or whatever form he had at that time, and he's deceiving Eve, and he's saying, ye shall not surely die. Now we can take that statement in a lot of ways, talk about it in from a lot of different directions. But one way is, you won't die today, Eve. But God is never wrong. Death was on the way for Eve and Adam and for the rest of us. Just not immediately. Just step by step. That the devil is the father of lies. And the most effective lie has an element of truth mixed in. Now, while the ever-present device is in your hand, the fake science, the science falsely so-called, can get to you all day, every day. And that's partly why these things exist, of course, other than to spy and snitch and be used to sell products. They are here so that the lies have easier access to you and me. Now, it's common knowledge at this point that the people we call scientists are largely bought and sold. They can be used to push different agendas and lobbies. Not a secret. But somehow, most people you know believe almost anything from a quote-unquote scientist, or with the word science attached to it. Probably you do too. And I might be talking about you right now, listening and or watching. Even if you're smarter than the average bear, even if you really are saved, according to what Bible says, even if you're a true believer in the gospel, which says that the Lord Jesus died, was buried, and resurrected to pay a holy God for your sins and mine, you're probably more likely to believe a scientific study, as they call it, than the King James Bible. Because you want to feel smart, and you don't want to be disrespected by worldly, wise, or lost people. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. All that being said, that doesn't mean there isn't such a thing as science, real science. Now, some people will straight up lie, saying that Christians or us Bible thumpers don't believe in science. You ever heard that? Now, you may have seen so-called conservatives or people with high profiles like the recently re-elected Donald J. Trump being used as a foil or a stand-in for Christians. And I've argued that it's even questionable whether the Trump person is even really a born-again, under-the-blood, saved Christian. I straight up say that he isn't a Christian, but I'll leave room for that. I'll leave room for it. And the Trump person is said to be a quote-unquote unbeliever in science, for several reasons. And again, is that even true? Is he a Christian, and does he not believe in science? Bottom line, Trump can be used as a stuffy man, I call it, a scarecrow, to absorb mockery. But the lie is Christians, Bible believers, don't believe in science. It's not true. Or at least you can't throw a blanket like that and hit us all. Some of us know there is a true science. What I and other Christians and what many anti-Christian folks will agree is that we'll say there's a false science out there masquerading as or mixing in with real science. And what I and some other Christians say is real, true science lines up with the Bible. Science is observable experiments and conditions from which you can then pull a result. Now, if your result is different than 100 others who had the same experiment under the same conditions, something's not right. It's not science now. Something's not right with the components or the procedure. The easy example you can use is you mix oil and water. You already know the oil settles on the water once the two substances settle. If the water is going to sit upon the oil, either or both substances are misidentified or mislabeled somehow. Something is off. That's a very simple example of real science, something you can do yourself. What science falsely so-called does is give you results, and there's no way to check. There's no way to know how they got the results. And you're just told to believe what they tell you. And if you question it, not even doubting it, but just asking questions about the procedure or about the people who gave you the results or such things, then you're going to be mocked. You're simply told something, and you're supposed to trust it because science. If you'll notice, as knowledge increases and people run to and fro, the world's scientists keep, quote unquote, discovering things that agree with the Bible, where previous generations said something different. People laughed 100 years ago or so at the preachers who said that evil communications corrupt good manners, which means that they were telling people in that time that we ought not consume the filth of this thing called Hollywood. But you fast forward to the present day, and we have children and adults too, or largely most people are rude, they lack natural affection, they hate authority, they're shooting up schools and theaters as they grip their Netflix devices, hypnotized. And it's partly because they've been influenced by these evil communications, these entertainments. Or, the Bible admonishes us to discipline children, sometimes with the rod or spanking. And through most of the 20th century, through so-called experts like the Dr. Spock person, training the child up with discipline was mocked. And up until the day I'm speaking, we as parents are supposed to let the kids turn into these pouty, self-absorbed, pleasure-seeking sodomites. And now some of the psychiatrists who are supposedly scientists and supposed to be our guides are going around saying that we need to rein the children in a little bit. And now that's after several generations have already been shipwrecked on the love thyself garbage. Now I could go on and on like this for hours on subjects like diet, medicine, and marriage. The Bible is always correct. And the dumb, smart people, the educated folks, the lost people, they all come around eventually to agreeing with the Bible. But these smart Christ rejectors, they're not going to give the Bible credit for saying it first or for saying it at all. They'll just say that they figured something else out. They just say, believe in science. Don't question. Just believe. We'll have a no direction tomorrow. But you know what? God doesn't do that. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's rock, and these fake scientists are shifting sand. And we already know that what the world calls science is the religion of most people today. People like to say that the Christian sits there and trusts everything the preacher says without questioning it. Well, there are believers who fit that bill. And that kind of self-labeled Christian is wrong for that. But some of us Christians are what Bible calls Bereans, at least figuratively. We search the scripture daily to see if what we're told is really written in there. And then we get with the Lord in prayer and consider the word to see if it's true indeed. Meanwhile, the members of the religion of science, falsely so called, you sit there and trust everything that your preachers tell you without questioning it. You're amazed and awed, and you put the open mouth emoji on all the science and space rocket and nature posts. What's the difference? It's all just a matter of faith after all. But you don't question your people. Look at these guys that I'm showing you right here. Guys like these three. If you're watching a video attached to this audio, there's some of the world's preachers and priests. You have this Dyson fellow, that I think Kaku person, and then Nye, the science guy. These are what you call gatekeepers for the science cult. And there's a lot of other ones like that too. Lost folks make a mockery of Christianity by saying believers don't question a pastor, which is untrue. The Lord tells us through the Bible to test them. God says, let's reason together. Reason. That's the Lord asking you. He's allowing you to test him. To ask the God of this Bible if he's really there and if the things written inside are true. Asking with faith that you're actually going to get an answer. The same people who reject Jesus Christ as the way, the truth, and the life, and who say the Christian is a blind follower, will follow these celebrity scientists in any and everything they say. I know that not every person who is employed as or calls himself a scientist is a bold-faced liar. I understand some of these people are sincere. I simply say that sincere people can get caught up in a system that twists the truth. Doctors, teachers, engineers, and other scientists, and yes, church leaders like pastors might end up following and then pushing a lie. That's because they're following a system or programming instead of using discernment. Sometimes somebody like a pastor or a preacher or some kind of Bible teacher will end up in what we call seminaries or cemeteries, where they're educated out of a belief in God. So now they don't really even believe the Bible, but they're representing the Bible before the world. They're in a system. But getting to the science there, the science falsely so called, that the sincere and insincere, and people who are being bought off, what those kind of people will prop up, that kind of science, is still tricking people because somebody says, according to scientists. And then they're going to lie. And I'm amazed how well that works on people. And it silences people who question it. So people know that this is some kind of deception. But then when you deal with people in real time or on social media, for example, they're going to constantly parrot the mainstream media or narratives, as you may say. They're going to talk about studies and science with a straight face as if it's all true because it has a label on it. And they can't see that the thing they're talking about has obvious deception run all through it. I'm not saying that anything attached to science in major or social media is wrong or a lie. What I am saying is most of the time there's going to be a lie woven into it. Even when you do find some truth in the studies and scientists that they're going to put before you, they as in the world, it's meant to distract you from what God has for you. People can't see an obvious deception a lot of times, even when they're really possessing some intelligence, because they're in the devices, they're in the screens all day. There's something about these screens that it aggravates or exponentially explodes the deception or blindness, spiritual blindness that comes upon people. It's really vexing. And that's part of the reason that just speaking for myself, I very rarely pick up the laptop or device because I want to lose myself in entertainment or I'm trying to find some knowledge or something. I don't need something to make me laugh, and I don't need a lot of information or trivia or knowledge from this technology. I go to the Lord to get informed and to get cheered up. If you see me looking at my mobile phone, you best believe that most likely I'm scratching for some rent money. Or when I do watch the average video or clip and making a living isn't involved, it's with the Bible in mind. And that means I'm trying to pick apart who and whatever using that book. I'll never run out of material when I do that. I'll never finish pointing out the ways that the world acknowledges the truth of the Bible, even as they mock and twist and pervert it. As I reference all the time, the way that people must constantly mention the Holy Bible is a great assurance to me as a believer. It tells you, dear Christian, that even the devils know and tremble. Now, let me narrow this down, all this science talk, down to what we touch on from time to time, which is the medical community. The educated doctors are thought of in the same light as your scientists. By that I mean they have specialized interests or knowledge. And I mean they are programmed in a certain way, and usually they can't move out of that lane. Those of us outside of their system of thinking or schooling are not supposed to question them. You ever try to ask a doctor about his advice or try to get something more out of him? Usually they're going to get offended. Have you ever noticed that? Most of you don't even ask your doctor something. You just nod your head and grab the prescription and run off or whatever. You don't ask them questions, but if you do, you're going to notice it's like you've stirred them up. You're disturbing them. You ever tried it? Can you see it? I think I talked before in one of these messages about being near death in the hospital a few years back. It's the only time in my life that I've been in that state. I had a period of bad diet and unhealthy habits pretty much through the decade of my 20s. But most people who know anything about me or knew me when I was young will tell you that I eat for strength, not pleasure, and my intake is relatively healthy. I've kept myself in shape and in motion. I normally get my rest. And getting up to recent years, as I'm reaching middle age now, I didn't take the Rona therapy jab, which I and many others have good reasons to believe has caused an acceleration of various illnesses. But when I was a child and had no say in the matter, I was subject to whatever additives the scientists and doctors and experts recommended or mandated for a public school or something. And the truth is, I suspect that's why I caught that L. That's why I ended up in what all those confused doctors described as a coma that I fell in. Now, over time, I've put the puzzle pieces together, and I suspect that some kind of vaccine time bomb inside me from a child, it finally got activated by other factors. But I'll probably never know about that on this side of things. And the treatments and medications I've been given since I got out of the hospital, they follow a specific prescribed path. It's a path laid out by the doctors who've been trained to follow a certain way. I've found some what we call alternative treatments or just natural old-time treatments, as well as the things that the doctors are giving me. I guess you can say it's farmers market stuff that the pharmacy is never going to have and will never give over to me. Now, I was told that accepted or ordained doctors cannot recommend that kind of natural stuff because they could get sued. And I disagree that that's really what it's about. I say that it's mostly about the doctors or the system being conditioned to keep you in the pharmaceutical industry's hands. I mean, this is pretty obvious stuff, both for money and to keep us in a system with the side effects and the slow breakdown of our bodies. We're not supposed to live long. We're supposed to be here and suffer. They can't recommend anything natural because they'll supposedly get in trouble, but they can recommend poisonous chemicals to put in our bodies. Is that it? It's all intentional, so we live shorter time and less healthy lives. Now, everything I'm saying leads us to this medical journal or encyclopedia of sorts we have here. Now, this is one of the books I've managed to keep over the years. There was a place I moved from back in 2006 or so And at that time, I didn't have much money, and I was under a pressure to get out of where I was living and move somewhere else. I had no help in moving, and I ended up leaving behind dozens of books, some that I'd had for years. But I'm thankful this one is still in my collection. I know that part of the reason for the internet is that information can be removed, edited, adjusted at the drop of a hat. I know that books have been mocked for a few decades, like in TV shows by the characters, such things, because it's a way to program people into hating reading. You just want to watch the videos. And now you can be programmed further into the deception because you want shorter and shorter videos. I think on average, I've heard we have the attention span of goldfish or something, and all by design. But let's just look at this medical journal here. 1989 publication. In 2020, I saw a few people make videos and they were holding this very book concerning the Rona, and I was very surprised. So I went and looked at this copy. What didn't surprise me is that a lot of those videos have been removed, deleted, channels taken down over them posting about what you're looking at here. I have a video channel alongside this one that I can no longer access. I can't upload on it or log into it. And I believe it's partly because of the videos I posted about the Rona. Just immediate deletion of videos, or what we call flagging. The robots block stuff. Other people have gone through that too for many reasons. And these people, sometimes they get angry about it. I don't get angry about it. Like people say, oh man, YouTube and Google, the system, the robots, the algorithm is wicked and controlling what I'm saying is messing up our information. They're against the truth. Well, no kidding. Of course, the world's mechanisms like a YouTube is against the truth. They got to let some of it out. But it's going to be controlled by Satan. Matthew chapter 4, the devil saying to the Lord Jesus, all these things will I give thee if thou wilt fall down and worship me. All the kingdoms of this world and the glory of them. Now, all these major platforms are his. I'd like to talk about that more at another time if I can. But all the platforms are the devil's platforms. Ultimately, people try to make a distinction between popular and social media. It's all media. And if it's major, like a YouTube, YouTube's not different than CNN. Just because it says YouTube on it, I don't mean it's really for you. People are still somehow unclear about this, still can't figure that out for some reason. You play the game of social media by his rules. Everything I'm saying in here right now is well known. Nothing profound here. But I'm just saying it for some future person, maybe not even born yet, as I'm speaking. People cannot speak freely on popular media. And if they do put a light on these things, it's going to be to draw attention from nobodies like me. So they seem like outsiders. Like I talk about Alex Jones and all these people or Trump even. They seem like they're outside the system, but they've got hundreds and thousands of followers, or millions even. And the fact that they have that many followers, subscribers, or what have you, that means they're not outside the system. They still, you say that they've been banned, they've been kicked off social media. Well, the major media is talking about them, so they've still got a voice. They seem like outsiders, and then they're going to draw your truth seekers right back into the deception. Most of you know about something called controlled opposition. But you know, if you're a true follower of Christ, you are a true outsider. You're a rebel of a different kind. You're one that seeks the Lord's righteousness. That's a real rebel. That's a holy rebel, I guess. You never hear the worldly, prideful rebel talk about that, do you? Normally, what you call a rebel is somebody he's stumping his own chest. Now, I have nothing to brag about outside of God. Anything good or truthful about me or from me is from the Lord anyway. I slip on that sometimes, but I admit it. Look here at the definition of coronavirus in this book. This book is from 1989, remember? What does it say? It says that coronavirus is simply a cold or flu. He said that from day one. Some of those videos are gone now, deleted or hidden. It was never a deadly disease floating around. We know that the cold or flu can develop into pneumonia or other complications. We know that those can get severe or even cause death for those with already depleted immune systems. But otherwise, it was always a cold. I'm not the only one who said this from day one, from the news of that Princess Diamond or Diamond Princess cruise ship. where people were quarantined because of some mysterious illness. Some of us were saying from that day, this is a cold. People got deceived into believing the common cold was something exotic. And I'm sure there's some other bells and whistles that have been attached to this thing now, but it's still just a cold. And so many of us have been tricked into taking these therapy jabs, which now have put more and more people into the hands of the medical establishment, and it's changed the way people even think. People let the devices, they let the TVs and the smartphones tell them what's true. They allowed talking heads to think for them. The trickery came in so many forms from so many sources and with such conflicting information that few people could process what was even going on. The main bullet point was, you must believe what the TV or internet doctor scientists told you, even though they were changing what they claimed to know every day. The whole time, we kept saying, it's just a cold. Yes, some people died from the cold or flu, but they were already dying from the cold or flu. The fear took over because they put a new name on this thing. Most of us didn't investigate these things for ourselves and still don't. We think we're investigating because we type into a search bar and we call it all research. And we can't see that the results of these searches are under satanic guidance that's never existed in quite this way. Physical books are being phased out. Never completely, of course, but people are being conditioned to hate reading actual books and just Google it, so that the information can be constantly edited and fooled with. You can't do that with books. And yes, I know that lots of books have programming and lying in them too. Probably most of them do. But you can't change them on the fly the way you can with internet information and trivia. You already know that's why Wikipedia comes up first in your search results. It's connected to Google just like the other major information sites with which you are familiar. This is why the videos about this book and what it says about the Rona and what the scientists say, they're going to largely be removed or have been removed. You're meant to get your thinking and beliefs edited, and you're going to allow it. Why? Because you're locked into thinking that science is supposed to be constantly edited. You believe in the almighty evolution, which is the editing of life on this earth by Miss Mother Nature or the universe. You believe in the editing of the order set by the Lord, which is God, then Jesus Christ, then the man, then the woman, then the children, and I guess after that, grass and herbs and seeds and trees and creatures of all kinds. The world's version of science looks at God's order of these things and says it should be changed up, transformed, improved upon. This is a very old deception to get you away from the pure word and God's order. And this is just repackaged over and over, and its covering is that the scientists are learning more and therefore can change the results to fit the flavor of the time. And you believe it? There's a flavor of this wicked repackaging that will appeal to you. The devil is going to throw the whole kit and caboodle at you until something sticks. Anything can be believed. Anything is acceptable except that King James Bible. Yea, hath God said.